An exhibition of skill became an act of cruelty.
He thought he was the most powerful man in the arena. Then he challenged an old man and learned what real strength is.
He challenged a man who didn't need to prove his strength. Because true mastery is not about the power to break others, but the wisdom to know when not to.
At California Grand Arena, a young, nervous martial artist was set to meet the world's most brutal champion. A ceremonial bout became fatal when the current champion, Tyson Creed, broke a teen's arm on live TV. Chuck Norris was not your average tournament attendee. For decades, he was a martial arts grandmaster and cultural icon who became famous for besting world champions without so much as a punch thrown. When Tyson Creed turned the mat into a war zone and ridiculed the crowd with boasts of supremacy, he had no clue. He was antagonizing a legend in life. Chuck walked onto the mat with unflappable composure and conducted a masterclass in control that would reverberate far beyond the arena. What started off as a display of technique would turn into a settling of scores for a whole sport. The world of Las Vegas martial arts would never be the same again after Chuck Norris got up. Not to fight, but to demonstrate the real meaning of power. Before we get back into it, tell us where you're listening from. And if this episode moves you, be sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've got something special saved for you. The Grand Arena in Las Vegas was abuzz. Light rays sliced through man-made fog, lighting up thousands of faces, some highlighted with team colors, others behind smartphones, recording every instant. The national anthem had just concluded. Now the voice of the announcer thundered across the jammed hall, shaking the floor and resonating in the bones of 17-year-old Liam Chun. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 43rd Annual International Martial Arts Championship. Backstage, Liam's fingers quivered slightly as he tightened the black belt for the 5th time. The smooth material, still relatively new to his touch in comparison to the worn-out belts of the masters, seemed almost alien to his fingertips. 6 years of preparation, thousands of hours of drill, and now he was just minutes from the moment of his life as a young man, an exhibition bout against Tyson Creed, 5-time champion, and the most famous name in contemporary martial arts. Breathe, Liam. Master Yuki Tanaka's tone was gentle but commanding by his side. The older man's face, creased with decades of knowledge, wore no look of excitement or concern, just steady concentration. Remember why you are here? Liam nodded, attempting to regulate his breathing to serve our dojo with dignity. Sensei. Master. Yuki's gnarled hand lay on Liam's shoulder for a moment. No, you are here to demonstrate what martial arts is all about, not what it has been reduced to. His gaze wandered toward the arena entrance where stagehands were setting up smoke machines and lasers for Tyson Creed's entrance. The match is meant to be a display of mastery and deference, but Creed ... double quote. He hesitated. What about him? Sensei. Master Yuki's face set in a hard-to-see smile. He battles to destroy, not to respect. Watch out. This isn't just an exhibition match, no matter what they say it is. Before Liam could answer, a production assistant with a headset popped up. 2 minutes, kid. Ready to proceed. Her clipboard was held tight against her breast, eyes repeatedly flicking towards her smartwatch. Liam nodded, his heart pounding against the rib cage. Yes, I'm ready. Master Yuki's last words echoed in his mind as he headed towards the entrance tunnel. Remember, real strength is not about breaking. It's about understanding when not to. The arena lights lowered as Liam walked onto the walkway. A small spotlight lighted his way to the center mat. The announcer's voice came back, announcing his championship debut out of San Francisco, California, Youth Division National Champion and youngest black belt ever invited to our exhibition series, La Mitra Ami. The crowd reaction was courteous, but subdued, the usual response to an unfamiliar name. Liam held his gaze ahead, center mat in his line of vision as Master Yuki had instructed. No showboating, no theatrics. Martial arts was not about show. In her commentator's station above, the arena, Alicia Rain leaned into her microphone. Unusual selection for this evening's demonstration. Liam Chun is youth, but his style has garnered kudos from old-school masters everywhere. His styles possess a level of precision we don't often find in opponents his age. Her co-commentator agreed. Absolutely, Alicia. While one can't help but wonder if tournament officials aren't preparing the kid for a harsh lesson, pitting him against Tyson Creed. Alicia's face grew tauter. Maybe, though, exhibitions are classically about displaying skill and not dominance. Tonight is supposed to be about technique, not. Her words were overpowered as the arena was engulfed in darkness. Pounding bass shook the building as spotlight churned wildly. The roar of the crowd sounded at once, a frenzy of anticipation that made Liam's entrance sound like a whisper in contrast. And here, at last, is the moment you've all been waiting for. The undisputed ruler of contemporary martial arts, the five-world champion, the man, the myth, the destroyer. Tyson Creed. Pyrotechnics had blown at the tunnel entrance. From the smoke and bursts of light stepped Tyson Creed, 30 years old, 6'2", the body of a Greek statue, and the attitude of a man who knew the world was watching his every step. His entrance song, a bass-heavy, attitude-filled custom tune, boomed as he swaggered to the mat, stopping in places to pose for the cameras or thrusting pointed fans. Alicia Rain's tone was professional, but those close to her could sense the remote chill. And look out comes Creed, making an entrance as only he can. 5-time champion, unbeaten in professional competition. While his exhibition bouts have at times come in for criticism for being too intense. Liam bowed respectfully as Tyson approached the mat. Tyson nodded perfunctorily before turning once more to play up to the crowd, arms aloft, basking in the applause. The contrast between them could not have been greater. Liam in his white GI of old, with black belt, standing motionless with clasped hands in front of him, Tyson in bespoke contest clothing, emblazed in sponsor advertisements, each movement designed to make him the center of attention. Seated in the front row and all but invisible among the celebrities and VIPs was a figure whose arrival had not yet been announced or noticed. Chuck Norris, martial arts great, cultural icon, in his 80s now, but still with the same quiet dignity that had characterized his career, stood silently. He did not attend public events anymore. He rarely came to commercial events, but Master Yuki was an old acquaintance, and he had said his student was competing tonight, so Chuck had come quietly to observe. The referee summoned both fighters to the center. Remember, gentlemen, this is an exhibition bout. Full contact is allowed but controlled. This is not about inflicting damage, it's about showing skill. 3 2-minute rounds. Are we clear? Yes, sir. Liam replied with another bow. Tyson smirked. Crystal. His gaze hadn't strayed from the audience. As they lined up for their starting positions, Master Yuki made eye contact with Chuck from the other side of the arena. A quiet nod traveled between them. Understanding between. Two men who had followed the same path decades apart. The referee held up his hand. Contestants prepared. The crowd fell silent in expectation. Go. Liam took up his stance, classic, balanced, textbook precise. Tyson moved circuitously, nearly contemptuously, his defenses lying loose. They sized each other up for a few seconds. Liam wary, Tyson looking nearly bored. Then Tyson engaged. The assault was delivered with such haste and ferocity that the crowd gasped in shock. Not the practiced, disciplined movement of an exhibition, but a full contact combination thrown to overwhelm his younger foe. Liam parried the initial blows, his skill intact in spite of the shock. But Tyson continued to pursue him relentlessly. Wow! Creed comes out swinging early, Alicia said, the displeasure in her voice barely hidden. Definitely not Chris Eubanks. Feeling out process we normally witness in exhibition bouts. Liam regained his cool sidestep, dodging a crushing roundhouse, kick and responding with a precision-practiced combination. His skill was impeccable, just what Chris wanted an exhibition to display. For one fleeting moment he managed to keep pace with Tyson's ferocity, garnering whisperings of respect from the astute crowd. The temporary success only appeared to infuriate Tyson. His face grew ominous, and the next round of attacks was delivered with even more ferocity. This was no longer exhibition fighting. This was a predator seeking mastery over prey. In his seat, Chuck Norris's gaze tightened ever so slightly. Next to him, another VIP leaned over. "Kid's holding his own, isn't he?" Chuck said nothing, his concentration unbroken. He noticed what others had not yet. The ominous change in Tyson's attitude, the motivation behind his actions. Halfway through the round, Liam caught a clean counterpunch. Nothing forceful, but technically flawless. A scattering of applause saluted the ability. Tyson's eyes flared. He retreated, wiping the mouth with the back of his hand, and smiled. Not the people-pleasing smile he usually displayed, but something glacial. "Nice one, kid," he said, so low only Liam could hear. "Let's observe how you deal with this." What ensued was not martial arts as Liam had been taught. It was brutal, effective, violence. Tyson came with a blinding combination, every punch with full force. Liam defended well, his technique unchanged. Technically correct, but he was being battered down by sheer ferocity. "This is getting out of hand," Alicia cut in harshly. "Creed has apparently lost sight of the fact that this is an exhibition." Master Yuki's face never changed, but his knuckles spread as he clenched the lip of his seat. On the opposite side of the arena, Chuck's own body had shifted forward at an angle, his eyes fixed intently on the action in progress. The moment arrived with 20 seconds remaining in the round. Liam, along the edge of the mat, tried a textbook counter. In the fleeting second that he was committed to it, Tyson read his chance. He grabbed Liam's arm, and with intent purpose, put on a joint lock that exceeded the bounds of competitive technique. Liam's shattered arm emitted a sound like a pistol shot amidst the arena din. The teenager's shout of agony shut the crowd down. He collapsed onto the mat, face twisted in pain, holding his obviously broken arm. The referee hurried forward, signaling wildly for medical personnel. Tyson retreated, a pleased smirk twitching at the edges of his lips. He raised his arms to the crowd, playing the moment of triumph, even as medical staff rushed around the teenage boy who fell. "That was completely on purpose." Alicia's words shook with barely suppressed outrage over the broadcast system. There is no room for that in an exhibition bout or any valid competition. What we had just seen was not martial arts, but assault. The audience's response was confusing, shocked gasps and outraged murmurings, interspersed with wild cheers from those who were at the viewing more out of a desire for blood sport than artistry. Master Yuki hastened to his student's side, his cool facade finally breaking as he knelt beside Liam. As medics eased Liam onto a stretcher, Tyson walked the mat like a victorious gladiator, soaking up the cheers and the beer. With equal relish, he snatched the announcer's microphone. "That's what happens when kids try to play with men," he proclaimed, voice booming through the now silent arena. "This ain't your little dojo tournament, boy." Silent in his front row seat, Chuck Norris observed, his weathered face revealing no emotion. But those close by could have seen something shift in his eyes, a quiet tempest brewing behind the placid surface. His eyes never leaving Tyson Creed as the champion made his self-congratulatory tour of the mat in the medical area. In the background, Liam struggled to hold back tears as the doctor examined his arm. "Sorry, Sensei," he whispered too. "Master Yuki, I let you down." Master Yuki shook his head. "No, Liam, you did us proud today." He is the one who failed in his art. His eyes wandered over to the arena where Tyson's voice still echoed. Some lessons are paid in blood. Outside in the arena, the mood of the crowd had darkened. Excitement was curdling into something more sinister, a general unease with what they had just seen, and maybe with themselves for enjoying it. As Liam was rolled past on the stretcher, Chuck Norris quietly stood up. The doctors hurried Liam down the backstage passageway, their raised voices off. Concrete walls. The boy's face had paled, sweat pounding on his brow as shock began to settle in. Master Yuki maintained a steady pace alongside the stretcher, his weathered hand lying lightly upon his student's shoulder, the only visible manifestation of his own turmoil. BP's decreasing slightly. "Let's move faster," one paramedic murmured to another. The wheels of the stretcher squeaked against the polished floor as they rounded the corner toward the medical station. Back in the arena, the atmosphere had fractured. What moments earlier had been a unified spectacle now splintered into pockets of conflicting reactions. Some fans were on their feet, shouting approval at Tyson's display of dominance. Others sat stunned, exchanging troubled glances. Parents with children in tow were already moving toward the exits, faces tight with disapproval. Tyson Creed stalked the mat like a predator, absorbing the chaos he'd created. He'd tossed the microphone back to the stunned announcer and now played, directly to the cameras that had zoomed in to capture the aftermath. He flexed, pointed to his sponsors' logos, and blew kisses to fans in the front row. Absolutely disgraceful. Alicia Rain's voice cut through the broadcast. Professional restraint finally abandoned. What we've witnessed tonight is the antithesis of what martial arts represents. Tyson Creed has just deliberately injured a 17-year-old competitor in what was supposed to be an exhibition of skill and respect. Her commentator cleared his throat awkwardly. Strong words, Alicia. Though to be fair, there's nothing fair about what just happened. She interrupted, leaning toward her microphone. I've covered combat sports for 15 years. That armbar was applied with deliberate intent to injure. In my view, Creed should be immediately disqualified and suspended pending review. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So, if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. In the arena's production booth, network executives were already in frantic discussion. The incident was going viral in real-time clips of the broken arm spreading across social media platforms. Commentary ranging from outrage to bloodthirsty approval. Hashtags were trending, half Creed v. Boy, broken champion, and most damning, half martial arts bully. We need to get control of this narrative, the lead producer hissed into his headset. Cut to commercials now. As the broadcast feed switched to advertisements, tournament officials converged at the edge of the mat. The head referee was gesturing emphatically, face flushed with anger. The tournament director, a former competitor turned businessman, looked torn between concern and calculation. Even as they debated how to proceed, the crowd's attention remained fixed on Tyson, who seemed to feed on the controversy swirling around him. Seated again in his front row position, Chuck Norris remained perfectly still, his weathered hands resting lightly on his knees. Unlike those around him, checking phones, arguing with neighbors, or shouting toward the mat, he maintained a centered calm. Only his eyes moved, tracking Tyson's every gesture with the precision of a man who had spent decades reading opponents' intentions through the subtlest of movements. Beside him, a well-dressed man with a tournament VIP badge leaned over. Disgraceful display, isn't it? Someone should teach that punk a lesson about respect. Chuck didn't respond, his focus unwavering. After a moment, the man shrugged and turned away, muttering something about rudeness. When the broadcast returned from commercial, Tyson had been escorted to the edge of the mat, but refused to leave the arena. Tournament officials kept their distance, seemingly uncertain about how to handle the situation. The announcer, visibly uncomfortable, attempted to transition to the next scheduled match. Ladies and gentlemen, We'll be proceeding with our program shortly. Please, please, remain in your seats. His awkward delivery only heightened the tension. Beer was mixed with applause as Tyson performed for the divided crowd, cupping his hand to his ear, challenging both in turn. Behind the scenes, the medic area had become a center of frenzied activity. The doctors just confirmed what everyone already suspected. Liam's ulna had been clean snapped and would need to be hospitalized with surgery most likely to follow. While medics readied him for transport, a tournament official stood over him, trying to contain the public relations crisis in the making. "We're very sorry about this," the official told Master Yuki, speaking in a lowered voice. "The company will pay all medical bills naturally. We're talking about disciplinary action against Creed right now." Master Yuki's reply was subdued but scathing. "You brought a shark in to swim with kids and play innocent when blood is spilled. Your apology is too little too late." The official winced. "Sir, this event was sanctioned by everybody involved. The waiver made it quite clear that the waiver did not include my student being intentionally injured for sport." Master Yuki cut in, rare anger flicking in his eyes. "Spare your lawyer's work for the newspapers." Alicia Rain had escaped from the commentator's booth and gone to observe the aftermath herself. She leaned against the corridor, notebook clutched, in her hand, observing the exchange warily. When Master Yuki turned his back on the flustered official, she approached cautiously. "Master Tanaka," she replied, booing slightly in deference. "Alicia Rain, Sports Central. I'm so sorry for your student. What we experienced out there was inexcusable." Master Yuki watched her for a moment. "You trained once. I hear it in your tone." Surprise flashed across her face. "Yes, 8 years before journalism, Shotoken." He nodded. "Then you know what was lost out there today, not just a match." "I do," she replied softly. "May I inquire? Will Liam be okay?" Master Yuki's eyes wandered to where his pupil was being readied to be sent elsewhere. Oxygen mask now in place over his mouth. "His body will recover. His spirit ... He rocked his head a little. "That's to be determined." Alicia paused, then questioned. "Would you be willing to make a statement? People should hear from someone. Who knows what martial arts is really supposed to mean?" Before Master Yuki could answer, a disturbance broke out from the direction of the arena. The amplified voice of Tyson bounced down the corridor. He had somehow gotten a hold of a microphone again. "Is that all you've got?" His sneering voice boomed through the building sound system. "One kid with a broken arm and everyone loses their minds. This is fighting people, not your kid's karate class." Master Yuki's face darkened. He turned to Alicia. "Perhaps it is not my statement that will be important now." Back in the arena, Tyson had taken evasive maneuver center mad once more. Security guards hesitating to move toward him. The tournament director was frantically waving at the sound technicians to turn off his microphone, but they seemed unwilling or unable to do so. "You want real martial arts?" Tyson went on, feeding off the cameras still trained on him. "This is it. Not bowing and meditation and philosophical garbage. Power, dominance, victory at any price." He turned slowly, his words taking in all sections of the crowd. "Anyone here disagree? Anyone think they can demonstrate me this honor? I supposedly don't possess." His challenge hung in the air. The reaction of the crowd was split, uncomfortable murmurs punctuated by scattered cheers from his hardcore fans. Most spectators simply watched an uncomfortable silence, watching a train wreck they couldn't turn away from. Then Tyson's eyes focused on the front row, onto the still-seated form of Chuck Norris. A slow, predatory smile crept over his face. "Well, well," he drawled into the microphone. "Look who we have here. A legend alive, Chuck Norris himself visiting among us." He made an over-the-top mocking bow. "Tell me, old-timer, is this what it's all about? Seeing who is the toughest, or have you forgotten how to be in the ring now that you're getting your Social Security check?" A collective gasp ran through the audience. Even Tyson's fans looked shocked by the blatant disrespect of a martial arts legend. Phones raised higher, recording what was fast becoming the most controversial moment in tournament history. In the commentator's booth, Alicia's co-host whispered, "Did he just challenge Chuck Norris? Is he crazy?" Chuck remained seated, his expression unchanged. If the insult affected him, he showed no sign. His calm seemed to frustrate Tyson, whose smile tightened at the edges. "Nothing to say," Tyson pressed, voice sharper now. "Come on, legend. The kid couldn't hack it. How about you show these people what old-school martial arts looks like? Or are the stories just that stories from different positions throughout the arena? People who knew Chuck, former students, fellow masters, old friends watched with knowing expressions. They recognized the stillness that had settled over him, understood what it signified. It wasn't hesitation or intimidation. It was the calm of a man who had transcended the need to prove himself decades ago. In the medical area, Liam had regained enough clarity to notice the monitor showing the arena feed. Despite his pain, his eyes widened at what was unfolding. "Sensei," he whispered through the oxygen mask. "Is that Chuck Norris?" Master Yuki nodded slowly. "Yes. An old friend. He came tonight to watch you compete." Liam's eyes filled with tears of pain, disappointment, and now disbelief. He was watching me, and now Creed is challenging him. "Creed does not understand what he is doing," Master Yuki said quietly. "He sees only another opponent to dominate. He does not recognize the depth of the water he steps into." On the arena floor, Tyson's challenge grew more direct. "How about it, Norris? One round, you and me. Show these people if the legend still has it." He spread his arms wide. "Unless you're afraid a real fighter might damage that reputation of yours." The silence that followed was deafening. Every eye in the arena fixed on Chuck Norris, waiting for his response. The camera zoomed in on his weathered face, broadcasting his image on the giant screens throughout the venue. Slowly, deliberately, Chuck Norris stood. He wore no GI, no belt, just a simple button-down shirt and slacks. Yet as he rose, an almost palpable shift occurred in the arena's atmosphere. His movements carried the fluid economy of a lifetime dedicated to martial arts mastery. No wasted energy. Nothing performative or showy. The crowd's reaction was immediate. Those who had been cheering Tyson fell silent. Those who had watched an uncomfortable silence began to murmur in anticipation. A chant started somewhere in the upper level, soft at first, then growing. Chuck Chuck. Chuck made no acknowledgement of the chant. His eyes remained fixed on Tyson, who stood center mat, microphone still in hand, his cocky expression, faltering slightly as the legend approached the edge of the competition area. In the commentator's booth, the broadcast had gone nearly silent, both announcers watching in disbelief. Finally, Alicia whispered into her microphone, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure what we're about to witness, but Chuck Norris appears to be responding to Tyson Creed's challenge. I should note that Mr. Norris is now in his 80s, though anyone familiar with his reputation knows age has done little to diminish his command of martial arts." Chuck paused at the edge of the mat. For the first time, he spoke, voice quiet, yet somehow carrying through the hushed arena. "Young man," he said, the words directed solely at Tyson, "martial arts isn't about breaking arms. It's about building character." Tyson's smirk came back. Nice words from a man too scared to step onto the mat. Chuck's face remained impassive. With the same measured calm that characterized his every motion, he stepped onto the competition mat. The instant Chuck Norris's foot hit the mat, the arena exploded. The respectful silence that had held the crowd in its grip dissolved into a deafening roar. A sound grew, not only from enthusiasm, but from the individual understanding that they were seeing something remarkable. Camera flashes strobed across the darkened room. phones raised high to record what no one had ever anticipated witnessing. Chuck walked with unhurried intent to the center of the mat where Tyson stood. His gait betrayed none of his years. Every step measured and balanced, shoulders relaxed, hands loose at his sides. He'd shed all competitive attire, protective gear, and wore nothing more than the simple clothing he'd arrived in, and a presence that expanded with each forward movement. Tyson's early bravado faltered visibly. The microphone in his hand quivered almost imperceptibly, caught by the high-definition cameras and fed onto screens around the venue. He recovered quickly, pasting his customary arrogant smile back into position. "Well, well," he said, amplified across the arena. "The legend actually accepted. Didn't think you had it in you, old man." Chuck stopped a few feet from Tyson, hands still at his sides. He made no move to take a fighting stance, no effort to prepare for combat. His eyes clear, focused, unnervingly calm, locked onto Tyson's with an intensity that made the younger fighter shift his weight unconsciously. From the commentator's booth, Alicia Rain had recovered enough from her shock to provide context. For those just joining us, we're witnessing an unprecedented moment. Following his controversial injuring of 17-year-old Liam Chun, champion Tyson Creed has directly challenged martial arts legend Chuck Norris, who appears to have accepted. Her commentator cleared his throat nervously. This can't be sanctioned. Chuck Norris is in his 80s. Tournament officials need to step in before." "I'm not sure anyone's going to step in," Alicia interrupted softly. "Look at the officials." The camera panned briefly to the tournament director and referees at the edge of the mat. They stood frozen, expressions caught between concern and awe. No one made any move to stop what was unfolding. At the center of the mat, Tyson circled, slowly, maintaining distance from Chuck, who remained motionless. "What's the matter?" Tyson taunted, voice carrying, even without the microphone now waiting for me to bow to show respect. He performed an exaggerated, mocking bow without taking his eyes off Chuck. There, happy now, ready to get embarrassed. Chuck's expression remained unchanged. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady and clear despite the roar of the crowd. "Young man, I'm not here to fight you." Tyson's face twisted in contempt. "Then why step on the mat, old-timer, to lecture me? To show these people your fancy forms?" He gestured broadly to the audience. They came to see fighting. Real fighting, not your movie stunts. "I stepped on this mat," Chuck replied, each word measured because someone needed to. The simple statement hung in the air between them. Something in Chuck's tone, not threatening, not boastful, but carrying absolute conviction, caused Tyson's smirk to falter again. In the medical area backstage, Liam had convinced the paramedics to delay his transport to the hospital. Despite the pain radiating from his broken arm, he sat upright on the stretcher, eyes fixed on the monitor, showing the arena feed. "Master." Yuki stood beside him, one hand resting lightly on his student's shoulder. "Is he really going to fight Creed-sensei?" Liam asked, voice tight with pain and disbelief. Master Yuki's eyes never left the screen. Chuck does not need to fight to teach a lesson. On the mat, Tyson had recovered his composure. He tossed the microphone aside and began rolling his shoulders, loosening up as though preparing for a sanctioned bout. "No referees this time," he called to Chuck. "No rules, just you and me. Legend versus reality." Chuck remained still, hands at his sides. "There are always rules, son." Whether you acknowledge them or not, Tyson's patience visibly thinned. Enough talk. He stepped forward, assuming a fighting stance, aggressive, forward-leaning, designed to intimidate. "Put up your hands, old. Man, I don't want people saying I sucker-punched a senior citizen." The crowd's noise had shifted, tension ratcheting higher. Many were on their feet now, the entire arena seemingly holding its collective breath. In the front row, several martial arts masters, some who had trained with Chuck decades earlier, watched with expressions that mixed concern with something like anticipation. "Last chance," Tyson warned. bouncing lightly on the balls of his feet. "Defend yourself." Chuck's response was to lower his gaze briefly to the spot on the mat where Liam had fallen. When he looked back up at Tyson, something had changed in his eyes. Not anger, but a resolved clarity. True martial artists don't need to announce their strength, he said quietly. They demonstrated through restraint. Tyson's patience snapped. With a sharp exhalation, he lunged forward, launching a lightning-fast jab aimed directly at Chuck's face. A strike thrown with full force, designed to end the confrontation instantly. What happened next occurred so quickly that many spectators would later debate exactly what they'd seen. Chuck's hand moved a minimal economical motion. Tyson's punch, thrown with championship power and speed, somehow meant nothing but air. In the same fluid movement, Chuck had shifted his position slightly, redirecting Tyson's momentum with a touch so subtle it appeared almost gentle. The result, however, was anything but gentle. Tyson stumbled forward, his balance compromised. The force of his own attack turned against him. He caught himself before falling, spinning back with a look of shock that quickly transformed into rage. "Lucky dodge," he growled, all suggestion of showmanship lost. His eyes had become slit-thin and menacing. Chuck had resumed his neutral position, hands back at his sides. His breathing was still level, his face still identical. It wasn't chance, son. The crowd responded with instantaneous gasps and a re-renewed chant. "Chuck! Chuck! Chuck!" The sound welled up from all parts of the arena, overwhelming the isolated voices still shouting Tyson's name. Enraged now, Tyson threw a combination jab. Cross roundhouse kick, every blow struck with the technical precision and intensity that had earned him 5 championships. The combination would have annihilated any ordinary opponent. Chuck's reaction defied expectation and seemingly the laws of physics. He didn't block in the classical sense. He shifted with an economy of motion that seemed hardly effortful slight. Adjustments in position, minimal deflections, a redirecting of energy that left Tyson striking at air, his own momentum sending him off balance again. In the commentator's booth, Alicia Rain leaned forward, professional detachment abandoned. "My God," she breathed into her microphone. "He's not even fighting back. He's just neutralizing everything Creed throws at him." Her co-commentator nodded, equally entranced. "This is master-level technique, not speed or strength. This is knowing the underlying principles of energy and motion that govern all martial arts." On the mat, Tyson's frustration mounted visibly with every fruitless assault. Sweat had begun to glisten on his forehead, his breathing coming harder while Chuck remained unruffled. The contrast between them increased with every passage. Tyson more and more, wild and aggressive, Chuck calm and measured. "Fight back," Tyson finally shouted, voice cracking with frustration. "Stop dancing and fight me!" Chuck shook his head marginally. "Fighting you would only legitimize what you did to that young man." He waved toward the door where Liam had been removed. "This is not about fighting. It's about accountability." Something in those words seemed to touch off a more profound anger in Tyson. His next assault came with abandoned restraint, a flurry of punches thrown with brutal intent, technical skill discarded for raw strength. For an instant, it appeared the sheer brutality might prove too much even for Chuck's mastery. Instead, Chuck performed a maneuver so impeccable in its timing and execution that a hushed reverence fell over the arena. As Tyson committed totally to a powerful punch, Chuck deflected the force, at the same time sweeping Tyson's supporting leg in a classic takedown familiar to martial artists from basic training. The thud of Tyson's body impacting the mat resonated through the suddenly motionless venue. He hadn't been thrown harshly or with any visible effort, and yet the precision of the technique had rendered him utterly helpless, flat on his back, staring upward at Chuck in shock disbelief. Chuck stepped back, taking no move to finish his advantage. "Get up," he said softly, slowly. In the medical area, Liam watched the screen with eyes wide, momentarily forgotten was his own pain. "Did you see that, Sensei?" he whispered. "The way he moved." Master Yuki nodded, a rare smile touching his lips. That is the difference between someone who practices martial arts and someone who lives them. Chuck doesn't fight. He simply lets his opponent defeat himself. On the mat, Tyson scrambled to his feet, humiliation burning in his eyes. Gone was the showman playing to the crowd. In his place stood an exposed bully, his carefully constructed image crumbling under the weight of genuine mastery. "Lucky move," he spat, circling more cautiously now. I wasn't ready. Chuck remained centered, his voice carrying a gentleness that somehow cut deeper than any insult. "You haven't been ready since. You stepped onto this mat. You've confused winning with dominating. They aren't the same thing." Tyson's jaw clenched. "Save the fortune cookie wisdom. This isn't over." "It can be," Chuck replied. "Walk away now. Visit the young man you injured. Apologize. Show these people that martial arts taught you something beyond how to hurt others." For a fleeting moment, something vulnerable flickered across Tyson's face. Perhaps the first genuine emotion he'd shown all evening. Then it hardened into resolve. "Never," he growled, and launched himself forward once more. What followed was less a fight than a lesson painfully public and impossible to misinterpret. Each time Tyson attacked, Chuck redirected, neutralized, or avoided, never striking back. With force, yet consistently demonstrating superior position and control. It was like watching a master class in the fundamental principles that Tyson, for all his technical skill, had apparently never truly absorbed. The crowd's reaction transformed with each exchange. What had begun as bloodthirsty excitement shifted gradually towards something closer to reverence. Even those who had cheered Tyson's brutality earlier now watched in hushed appreciation as Chuck demonstrated what decades of true martial arts mastery looked like. After nearly 2 minutes of increasing frustration, Tyson stood panting heavily, a sheen of sweat covering his face. Chuck remained composed, his breathing steady, stance relaxed but ready. "Enough games?" Tyson snarled, voice raw with anger and exertion. "You think you're teaching me something? Let's see how well philosophy blocks this." He launched into his signature move, the same devastating combination that had broken Liam's arm. The attack came with blinding speed, each strike flowing in two, the next with the technical precision that had made him champion. It was his most devastating sequence, one that had ended matches and careers. Chuck read the attack. The hold was a duplicate of what Tyson had done to Liam. Same joint lock, same vulnerable position. But where Tyson had used vicious force, Chuck simply maintained the hold with no pressure that could inflict damage. The arena fell utterly silent. Everyone knew the message. Chuck could snap Tyson's arm as easily as Tyson had snapped Liam's. The ability to do so was quite literally in his hands. Instead, Chuck bent forward slightly, his voice lowered, so only Tyson would be able to hear. "This is where you made your decision with that young man. This is where you made the decision that victory was more important than honor." Tyson's face twisted at the understanding of his total vulnerability. For maybe the first time in his career, real fear flashed across his face. Chuck kept him in the position for a second longer, then released him and backed away. "Martial arts isn't what you can do to other people," he stated, voice projecting. "The silent arena. It's what you decide not to do when you can." He spun and walked calmly to the mat's edge, leaving Tyson on his knees. The champion's head was bent not in respect, but in the suffocating weight of public humiliation. When Chuck reached the edge of the arena, the silence was shattered. It started as isolated clapping, then it grew until the whole arena roared, with its standing ovations crashing through every section. It was not the bloodthirsty roar that had welcomed Tyson's violence. It was something deeper: recognition, respect, perhaps even gratitude. Chuck nodded slightly to the response, then kept walking to the exit as he passed by the commentator's booth. Alicia Rain impulsively extended her hand. Chuck stopped, gripping it for a moment. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for reminding everyone what this is supposed to be about." Chuck nodded again, then pressed on, disappearing into the tunnel leading backstage. Behind him, Tyson Creed stayed on his knees in the middle of the mat, surrounded by the ear-splitting applause that wasn't for him. The backstage hallway buzzed with frenzied energy. Production assistants darted between stations. Security staff spoke into headsets with urgency, and network executives stood in tight knots, faces set in expressions that varied from panic to calculation. The meticulously planned tournament had derailed spectacularly. Live broadcasts preserve. In every instant of Tyson's humiliation and Chuck's wordless mastery. Through the chaos, Chuck Norris strode with the same deliberateness he showed on the mat. Staff cleared a path as he went by, conversations breaking off mid-sentence. Some nodded respectfully, others simply gazed, still trying to comprehend what they'd seen. His target was unmistakable. The medical area where Liam was receiving treatment. Approaching, he found Master Yuki waiting outside the door, arms crossed over his chest. The two men exchanged a look, decades of shared history passing. Between them in a wordless exchange. "My dear old friend," Master Yuki said at last, unclenching his arms and holding out his hand. "Too long." Chuck gripped the offered hand firmly. "Sorry it took these events to reunite us, Yuki. You came to see my student fight. That alone was worth it." Master Yuki's demeanor softened somewhat. What occurred after ... was necessary. Within the medical room, Liam sat upon the examination table, his broken arm stabilized in a temporary cast. The color had returned to his face, though lines of pain still creased his brow. When the door opened to show Chuck Norris standing by his sensei, the teenager's eyes grew wide, to perfect circles. "Mr. Norris," he breathed instinctively, trying to stand before wincing from the movement. That was words failed him entirely. Chuck came to the table, his weathered visage warming with a gentle smile. "Remain seated, son. You've been through enough today." Liam swallowed hard. "I saw what occurred on the monitor. The way you moved. ... Go quotes." He shook his head in stunned disbelief. "I've never seen anything like it." "What you witnessed wasn't about technique," Chuck replied, his voice carrying the weight of decades spent honing not simply his body but his comprehension. "Tyson has technique. What he lacks is perspective. He hurt you because he could," Master Yuki added, moving to stand beside his student. Chuck demonstrated to him another way restraint when holding power over others, the real measure of a martial artist. Liam looked down upon his broken arm. "I failed out there. I wasn't good enough." Chuck's expression turned serious. "No, son. You didn't fail. You were betrayed by someone who took the trust of an exhibition bout as a joke." He placed a hand gently upon Liam's uninjured shoulder. "The question isn't whether you failed today. It's what you'll take from this moment." The teenager looked up, meeting Chuck's steady gaze. "What should I take away? That there are people such as Tyson who will harm others simply because they can." "That's one lesson," Chuck acknowledged. "But perhaps the more significant one is that such people sooner or later meet their match, not through greater violence, but through greater wisdom." A commotion within the hallway interrupted them, raised voices and the approach of footsteps. The door burst open to reveal Tyson Creed, still flushed with exertion, eyes wild with a volatile mix of humiliation and rage. Two security guards stood beside him, clearly having failed to deter his advance. "This isn't over," Tyson spat, glaring at Chuck. "I'm still champion. I'm still the image of this sport. Is this what you want your sport to be about?" Chuck asked softly, nodding at Liam's broken arm. "Hurting children to establish your dominance." Tyson's eyes flickered across Liam briefly, something unreadable, crossing his face before the arrogant mask slapped back into place. Combat sports aren't for the faint of heart. He stepped into the ring. He pays the cost. It was an exhibition bout, Master Yuki said, voiced tight with suppressed rage. A demonstration of ability, not a battlefield. Everything's a battlefield, Tyson snarled. That's what none of you get, your classic Boeing and philosophy. Trash doesn't cut it in the real world. Strength is everything. Chuck regarded him for a long moment. I've met a lot like you in my time, he said finally. Men who confuse cruelty with strength, mastery with dominance. They all learn the same lesson eventually. Yeah, what's that? Tyson sneered. That they've constructed their foundations on sand. Chuck's tone was conversational but had an undernote of absolute conviction. True strength, the kind that lasts, comes from character, not breaking others to demonstrate your power. Tyson opened his mouth to retort, but Chuck went on before he could speak. I didn't step onto that mat to embarrass you, son. I stepped on. To remind everybody watching what martial arts is supposed to stand for, including you. He nodded toward Liam. You're presented with a chance right now to demonstrate true strength. Apologize to this young man. Demonstrate that champions too can admit when they've pushed too far. The medical room was silent. Even the security guards seemed to be holding their breath, witnessing something that felt somehow greater than the instant conflict. Liam looked between Chuck and Tyson, his face a mix of pain and wary hope. Tyson's face struggled through a complicated sequence of emotions. For a brief second, something vulnerable seemed to seep through, perhaps a glimpse of the man behind the persona he'd built up. Then his features hardened again. Keep your speeches, he said icily. This isn't one of your films where the bad guy sees the light. He glared at Liam, his eyes narrowing. Take this pain away, kid. Remember what it feels like to get into the arena with actual fighters? With that, he wheeled and shoved by the security guards, striding back down the hallway. One of the guards moved to pursue him, but Chuck hesitated in a slight shake of the head. Let him go, he indicated. Some things take longer to learn than others. Once Tyson had left, a thick silence fell over the room. It was only Liam who finally broke it, his own little voice, surprisingly level. He's not going to change, is he? That's not our decision to make, was Chuck's answer. Everybody has to do their own journey. Some do longer ones than others. Master Yuki stepped over to examine Liam's cast. The ambulance is waiting to take you to the hospital. Your parents are going to meet us there. Liam nodded, then glanced up at Chuck. Thank you for what you did out there. Not only for me, but for demonstrating to all of us what martial arts should actually be about. Chuck smiled, the smile warming his weathered face. You heal now, son. Both your arm and your soul. This moment does not predetermine your journey unless you let it. As medical staff moved in to prepare Liam for shipment, Chuck moved aside, sharing a few words in hushed tones with Master Yuki. Their conversation was halted by the arrival of Alicia Rain at the door, microphone at the ready, a camera operator standing respectfully behind her. Mr. Norris, she said, bowing slightly in the traditional style. I understand this is a bad time, but would you be willing to say a few words to our audience? What had occurred tonight was already viral. Everyone was referring to it as a turning point in the martial arts. Chuck thought about her request for a moment, then nodded. Not here, he said, nodding toward Liam. The young man needs privacy. Of course, Alicia readily agreed. She took the lead to a more secluded area of the backstage region off the main path of foot traffic, still visible from the medical room. After the camera was set up, Alicia settled into her professional persona. We're backstage here with Marshall, arts legend Chuck Norris after his unprecedented encounter with champion Tyson Creed. Mr. Norris, thank you for the interview. Chuck nodded, his stance easy but dignified. What we saw tonight has already been hailed as a turning point in tournament history, Alicia went on. Can you tell us why you accepted Tyson Creed's challenge after he broke young Liam Chun? Chuck thoughtfully chose his words before speaking. What I saw wasn't martial arts, he said at last. It was bullying in a GI and calling itself strength. When you witness something fundamentally wrong, staying out of it isn't an option. You didn't actually fight Creed per se, Alicia noted. You diffused his attacks without retaliating. Was that a deliberate decision? Violence met with greater violence only brings about more violence, Chuck answered. That young man didn't need someone to hurt Tyson. He needed someone to show him martial arts at its finest isn't about conquest. It's about mastering oneself. Alicia nodded judiciously. One thing that struck some viewers was that you could have used the same arm lock Creed used to break Liam Chun's arm, but you released him instead. Can you discuss that moment? That moment was the entire point, Chuck replied simply. Anyone can break an arm when they have the leverage. Real strength is the power to injure and choosing restraint instead. Do you think tonight will make a difference in the way combat sports are done? Chuck's face turned thoughtful. I hope it reminds people that while competition has its place, we've lost something precious when winning is more important than integrity. He looked toward the medical room. That young man was better than what happened to him tonight. All our students deserve better. Alicia looked ready to ask another question when commotion came from the area of the arena. The sound of raised voices and movement in the distance indicated something significant was afoot. We may have to cut this short, Alicia said, looking toward the noise. A production assistant hurried up, breathless with urgency. You need to get back to the arena, he told Alicia. Creed's back on the mat. He's challenging anyone and everyone. It's getting ugly. Alicia turned to Chuck. Question unstated, but in her eyes. Go, he said. That's your job tonight. As Alicia rushed off with her cameraman, Chuck stood where he was, observing the medical staff roll Liam towards the door on a gurney. Master Yuki strode beside, one hand grasping protectively on his student's shoulder. For an instant, Chuck was happy to leave things be without his further intervention. Then, with a hardly audible sigh, he turned and headed back towards the arena. The arena had changed in the minutes since Chuck had departed the mat. What had been a collective moment of respectful appreciation had fractured into chaos. Tyson Creed stood center mat once more, but the dignified champion persona had completely broken down. In its place stalked something raw, more menacing, cornered beast striking out in all directions. Is this what you came to see? He bellowed, voice shattering with emotion, though no microphone enhanced his phrases. Your beloved legend appeared for one fortunate instant, and you're all willing to discard all that I've achieved. The reaction of the crowd was disjointed. Partings were still supportively hauntingly quiet. Others were filled with insults and liquor. A tiny group of die-hard supporters still applauded, though their cries now sounded weaker, less assured. Tournament officials conferred at the periphery of the competition mat, obviously discussing what to do next. Security staff stood around strategically, but appeared unwilling to actually take the championship fighter off the mat. Five-time champion, Tyson went on, flailing his arms to the championship belt held at the periphery of the arena, undefeated in professional competition. And you turn on me because I showed a kid what real fighting looks like. Hailing from the commentator's booth, Alicia Rain had picked up broadcasting again, her voice stringently in check as she chronicled the developing situation. For those tuning in late, champion Tyson Creed has come back into competition space after his run-in with Chuck Norris. Tournament officials seem to be considering how to proceed with this unprecedented scenario. Her fellow commentator leaned in close. This is more than unprofessional. After intentionally injuring a teen rival and getting, let's be honest, utterly outfought by Chuck Norris, Creed appears to be experiencing some sort of public breakdown. Tyson strode the M. Like an animal in a cage, his actions jerky and spasmodic. Where are all the tough guys now, eh? He taunted, spinning all the way around to face all parts of the crowd. You think that one old man flaunting some fancy dodging makes a difference? Who else is going to come up? Who else believes they can beat the champion? The discomfort in the crowd became tangible. What started as a well-organized sporting event had descended into something darker, more basic. Parents covered children's eyes. Others started heading for the exits, not wanting to see whatever was going to occur next. Tournament officials finally made a move. The director himself walked to the edge of the mat, accompanied by security. "Tyson," he called, voice firm but wary. "This event is over. I want you to vacate the competition area immediately." Tyson turned to him, his eyes frantic. "Over? Because I said so?" "I'm the reason people pay for tickets. I'm the face of this organization." "Not any longer," the director said, his public mask cracking to show real anger. "Your actions tonight broke every rule this tournament was built upon. Please step off the mat right away, or security will remove you." For an instant, it looked like Tyson might physically attack the director. His body tightened in tension, hands furrowing into fists. Security guards braced, ready to step in. Then a ripple of response spread through the crowd, a tide of murmurings that began near the entrance tunnel and radiated throughout the arena. Heads turned, phones held aloft higher, and a chant began to coalesce once more. Chuck ... Chuck ... Tyson sensed the shift in focus. He turned to face the cause of the commotion, body still vibrating with barely suppressed rage. Chuck Norris stood at the rim of the mat once more. He hadn't changed out of his clothes or made any preparations. He simply stood there present and centered, awaiting recognition. The tournament director took a step back at once, relief on his face. Security guards likewise stepped back, making room for whatever came next. Tyson's response was instant and visceral, a mix of renewed anger and badly suppressed fear. "Back for more, old man!" he shouted, voice rough. "Once wasn't enough to get lucky." Chuck didn't react right away. Rather, he scanned the arena, seeing the cowering kids, the cringing parents, the spectators who had gathered to see athletic greatness, and found themselves witnessing a man's public breakdown instead. When he did speak, his voice traveled well, considering the measured tone he used. "This has to end, son. Not with more brawling. With dignity. Tyson spat the word like venom. "You take everything I've earned. Embarrass me in front of the world and speak to me about dignity." "You did that to yourself," Chuck said, voice neither accusatory nor judgmental, merely articulating a fact. "But it doesn't have to be you anymore." Something in those words appeared to pierce Tyson's armor. For an instant, doubt passed over his face. Maybe the first real weakness he'd exhibited all night. Then it set in again, stubbornly, as determined defiance. "Easy for you to say from your pedestal," he snarled. The adored legend who never had to struggle for anything in his life. A bitter smile played on Chuck's lips. "You know nothing about my journey, just as I know nothing about yours. But I do know this. What you're doing right now isn't fighting for something. It's lashing out because you're afraid." The observation struck with surgical precision. Tyson physically recoiled as though from a blow, then recovered with a snarl. Afraid of what? Of discovering that everything you've built your identity around might be hollow, Chuck said quietly. "That winning isn't the same as earning respect. That being feared isn't the same as being admired." The arena had gone completely silent. Thousands of spectators collectively holding their breath. Even Alicia had stopped her commentary, letting the moment unfold, unfiltered. Tyson's breathing had become ragged, his composure fraying visibly with each word Chuck spoke. "You don't know me," he said, voice cracking slightly. "You don't know what I've overcome to get here." "You're right," Chuck acknowledged. "I don't, and I'm not here to judge your path. I'm here because a young man with a broken arm is being loaded into an ambulance right now, and someone needed to stand for what martial arts is supposed to represent." He took a single step onto the mat, Not aggressive, not challenging, but clearly signaling his willingness to see this through. You can leave this arena tonight as the man who lost control and hurt a kid, then melted down when confronted, or you can leave as someone who faced a difficult truth and found the strength to acknowledge it. The choice is yours, but it needs to be made now. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the ambient sounds of the arena, the hum of air conditioning, the distant murmur of staff communications seemed to fade away. Every eye in the building focused on the two figures on the mat. One tense and unraveling, the other calm and grounded. What happened next occurred so quickly that many spectators would later disagree about the exact sequence of events. Tyson lunged forward with a primal cry, not the calculated attack of a trained fighter, but the desperate charge of a man who had run out of options. His technique abandoned. He simply tried to overwhelm Chuck with raw aggression and physical force. Chuck sidestepped the initial rush with the same economy of movement he displayed earlier. But unlike before, he didn't simply redirect and neutralize. This time, as Tyson's momentum carried him past, Chuck executed a single perfectly timed strike. The impact was neither showy nor excessive. A short, precise blow delivered with just enough force to achieve its purpose. It connected at exactly the right point to disrupt Tyson's balance and coordination without causing injury. Tyson froze mid-motion, his body suddenly unresponsive to his commands. His eyes widened in shock as his legs seemed to simply stop supporting him. He sank to his knees, then sat heavily on the mat, limbs temporarily limp, brain struggling to process what had happened. Chuck stepped back immediately, hands returning to a neutral position. He hadn't followed up, hadn't pressed any advantage. The single strike had accomplished all that was necessary. The crowd's collective gasp echoed through the arena, followed by a stunned silence as everyone tried to comprehend what they just witnessed. It hadn't been a knockout in the traditional sense. Tyson remained conscious, clearly aware of his surroundings. Yet something fundamental had changed. The fight, both literal and figurative, had left him completely. In the commentator's booth, Alicia finally found her voice. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said softly, "I'm not entirely sure what we just witnessed, but it appears Chuck Norris just ended this confrontation with a single strike. Tyson Creed is. He appears to be uninjured but completely neutralized. Her Commentator leaned forward, squinting at the scene. That was some sort of pressure point method, the type of thing that most of us believed existed only in films or ancient books. Chuck just ... My God. On the mat, Tyson sat still, his face dazed, but slowly clearing. The fury that had engulfed him just moments before seemed to have dissolved, replaced by something more like confusion. He glanced at Chuck, who stood placidly in attendance, and for the first time that night, truly saw him not as foe or barrier, but as the personification of a mastery he had never really comprehended. "How did you ... Tyson started, voice barely audible. "That's not relevant," Chuck answered softly. "What's important is what comes next." Medical personnel had ventured slowly up to the rim of the mat, wondering if their services would be required. Chuck gave them a small wave forward. "He's not hurt," he reassured them. "He's just temporarily confused. Give him a minute." As sensation crept into Tyson's arms and legs, the medical staff assisted him to stand. The braggart champion who had swaggered into the arena hours before was gone. In his stead was a man who was humbled, not by brutality or humiliation, but by the abrupt, unavoidable realization of how much more there was for him to learn. Chuck observed as Tyson was escorted towards the door, saying nothing and doing nothing else. His mission had been achieved. The standoff had concluded not with further brutality, but with the necessary force to regain control and balance. As Tyson made his way into the tunnel, the crowd response gradually mounted, beginning in isolated applause, then building into continuous appreciation that filled the arena's every nook and cranny. It wasn't the mindless howl of bloodlust that usually accompanied a knockout, but rather something more subtle acknowledgement of a lesser kind of triumph. Chuck nodded acceptance of the reaction with a slight bow, then headed back off the mat again. As he did, his gaze passed over the section where Master Yuki had been seated earlier. Though the seat was now empty, Chuck nodded slightly, as if completing a conversation that had been ongoing for decades. In the commentator's booth, Alicia watched Chuck's exit with undisguised admiration. "In my 15 years covering combat sports," she said into her microphone, "I've never seen anything like what we witnessed tonight. This wasn't merely about a dispute. It was about the very heart of martial arts itself." Her fellow commentator nodded, gravely. "Now the question is whether tonight makes a difference in the future. Will this be lost as merely a peculiar moment? Or as the time when the martial arts community collectively remembered what it's all about?" Alicia's answer was with quiet surety. "I think that depends on what each of us takes from this evening. Chuck Norris didn't just confront Tyson Creed tonight. In a way, he confronted all of us. Our appetite for spectacle over substance. Our willingness to celebrate dominance at the expense of honor. As Chuck disappeared into the tunnel, the arena, lights began to brighten, signaling the official end of the evening's events. Staff entered the competition floor and started to take apart and clean up. But the thousands of people sitting in their seats showed little inclination to end the magic of what they had just seen. Many already had their phones out posting videos and reactions on social media. Within minutes, videos of the scuffle had started trending across the world along with hashtags that varied from Chuck Norris moment to Martial Arts to the perfect strike. The news was already breaking through the arena confines, speeding across the cyber world to be seen by millions who were not there. But unlike the viral videos that usually manage to catch the internet's fleeting imagination, this moment had something more substantial, a reminder of values that went beyond the circus, an exhibition of greatness that extended beyond skill. As the crowd finally started to drift away, people talking in hushed tones of excitement and contemplation, one thing became quite evident. What they had seen wasn't only the humiliation of a champion or the surprise comeback of a legend. It was the unobtrusive restoration of balance to an art form that was beginning to lose its direction. And it had only taken one superb strike to do so. 3 weeks later, Master Yuki's dojo was unusually still for a Saturday morning. In his tiny office, he confronted Liam, whose arm was still in a cast and covered in signatures from fellow students. "Am I sure about coming back?" Liam echoed Master Yuki's query. "Yes, Sensei. I've had ample time to reflect, and I'm sure." Master Yuki examined his pupil intently. "The body healing has only just commenced, but I'm worried more about your essence. Fear seated once can take root and be hard to uproot." "I won't pretend and tell you I'm not fearful," Liam confessed, "but I'm more afraid of letting what happened define my relationship with martial arts forever." A rare smile touched Master Yuki's lips, wisdom from one so young. A knock interrupted them. The senior instructor entered, expression apologetic. "Sorry to interrupt, Sensei, but you have visitors." Alicia reined from Sports Central and Tyson Creed. Liam's eyes widened. Master Yuki remained impassive, though something flickered behind his calm exterior. "Reveal them in." As they entered, Tyson walked with unprecedented reserve, his usual assertive stance tempered, nearly guarded. The strutting champion who had dominated the arena weeks before was gone. Master Tanaka Liam, Alicia bowed low in greeting. "Thank you for receiving us unscheduled." An awkward silence followed the small room until Alicia eventually spoke. "I'm here unofficially. No cameras, no article." This was something Tyson had asked for. Everyone looked at the champion, who suddenly appeared to discover his hands deeply. "Interesting. This isn't easy for me," he started. "Few worthwhile things are," Master Yuki noted softly. Tyson nodded, taking the soft rebuke. "What I did to you was wrong," he said, gazing at Liam. "Not only against the rules of the show, but against everything martial arts is all about. I came to apologize." "Why now?" Master Yuki asked, his voice neither accusatory nor skeptical, merely inquiring. "I was angry at first at Chuck Norris, at the tournament officials, at everybody but myself." Tyson shook his head. "I blamed everybody for 2 weeks. Then I went and saw my first teacher, the man who had given me my white belt when I was 12. I hadn't spoken to him in years. He wasn't impressed with my championships or my apologies." "Tyson has been taking practical steps," Alicia added. "He's stepped aside from competition for the next year and relinquished his title voluntarily." "I'm going back to basics," Tyson affirmed, retraining from the ground up with my original teacher. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "This holds a certified check for all medical costs and rehabilitation fees. I'm also setting up a scholarship fund for young martial artists who represent the ideals I forgot along the way." He put the envelope down on Master Yuki's desk, then turned back to Liam. "Once you're back on your feet, I'd like to offer my services as a training partner. Not to compete with you, but to assist you in preparing for whatever competitions you want to enter." Master Yuki's face remained measured. "A kind gesture, Mr. Creed, but perhaps premature. Trust once lost takes time to regain." "I know," Tyson nodded. "I just wanted you both to know that my apology isn't empty. It's a promise to change. There's something else." Alicia said, "Chuck Norris has agreed to give his first formal interview about what happened. He's asked you both to be there, particularly you, Liam. Me, but I did nothing. Special. Being the catalyst for change is sometimes special enough," Master Yuki commented. "He's invited me to join as well," Tyson continued, "to share truly what I've learned." Liam thought about this for a very long time. If telling my story keeps another student from having to endure this, then so be it. "Thank you," Tyson continued, respect shown on his face. "That's courageous." After their guests had left, Liam still sat, trying to make sense of the experience. "Do you think he was sincere, Sensei? His apology. Time will tell his truthfulness." Master Yuki answered, "Words are easily spoken. Continued action is the real test of altered character. But yes, I think he has started on an authentic journey." 6 months on, Master Yuki's dojo was abuzz. Students of all ages flowed through forms and practice drills under close supervision. In the corner, Liam, his arm healed now, worked patiently with a group of beginners. "Remember," he reminded a frustrated young student struggling with a simple form, "perfection is not the aim. Improvement is concentration on being better today than yesterday." From the doorway, Master Yuki watched with quiet satisfaction. At his side stood Chuck Norris, who had taken a point to come by from time to time since the tournament. "He's an outstanding teacher," Chuck remarked. "The trial transformed him." Master Yuki nodded. "Adversity refines us all. Some it makes stronger, some it shatters." He looked at his old friend. "Your intervention that night rippled further than you possibly meant." "Change was already on its way," Chuck said. "I merely supplied a catalyst." "Have you spoken with Tyson?" Chuck inquired. "He comes, by occasionally to train, not to teach, to learn. He began at white belt again, as he vowed." Master Yuki's expression became contemplative. "Tournament regulations now focus on control and technique over dominance. Schools are being held to account on character building as well as competitive success. It's a start." As class was ending, Liam dismissed his students with a formal bow, then noticed the visitors. His face lit up as he approached. "Mr. Norris, I had no idea you were stopping by today." "Just passing through," answered Chuck with a grin. "Wanted to check on how you were doing better day by day," said Liam. "I've been concentrating more lately on teaching rather than competing. It's allowing me to get to know the forms at a much deeper level. The best method of mastery is sharing it, commented Chuck. What about competition? Will you get back onto the tournament circuit one day, but with a changed attitude? Trophies are no longer the benchmark of success. Liam continued, Next month is the National Youth Championship. I'm bringing 4 of our students not to win, but to witness the community at its finest. Tyson is helping coach them every week. He's changed, though, more patient. The journey makes us all change. Chuck replied, If we're open to learning from each failure. He glanced around the dojo at the students sweeping the training floor. The courteous bows exchanged. This is what martial arts is supposed to develop, not fighters, but better human beings, nodded Liam. Our youngest student asked me last week why we learn to fight if fighting is bad. I replied to him, We don't train to fight. We train to learn the wisdom to know when not to. Chuck smiled, true warmth reaching his eyes. Couldn't have put it better myself. As they approached the office of Master Yuki, Liam excused himself. Master Yuki stood watching him go, then turned to his old friend. Through difficulty growth, he noted quietly, the broken arm made a stronger foundation. Not only for him, Chuck answered, for all of us who needed reminding of what's most important in this journey. Outside the windows, sunlight drifted across the training floor, lighting the way that generations had tread before and that many more would tread. Not a path of dominance, but of ongoing self-discipline and deference, a path where strength was not measured by breaking foes, but in the forging of character, one difficult step at a time. Next, we have 2 more amazing stories in the queue. All you have to do is just click on the image you would like to see, and it will direct you there. If you like this video, do not forget to subscribe. It would be much appreciated.